Okay, cool. All right. So now that we can hear each other,
Yes.
just kind of going back on the thing we started talking about. And,
Hmm.
I've had some time to think about what we had talked about and kind of what are we trying to get out of this first conversation? Like towards people. Um,
Yeah.
like how would someone approach what we're talking about and start the process? Like, where would
Hmm.
you suggest that people start? I know where I would start, but
Hmm.
I'm curious where you would think, like, okay, let's say this guy shows up and he's just miserable,
Hmm.
doesn't feel good, he's got some
Yep.
visceral fat, obviously the typical 50-year-old guy, and
Hmm.
he's chunky, he's got a round face, he doesn't feel comfortable, can't tie his damn shoes,
Yep.
right? I mean, that's usually the first sign. I call it the old man grunt sounds.
Hmm.
Grunt to get out of the car, grunt to tie your
Yep.
shoes. You're always making these sounds. And I always joke about it because I was doing that. I was like, oh
Yep.
my God. I'm like, having to exhale just to tie my shoes. And I'm not even that big, right? I couldn't imagine if I was in the 250 range, which is pretty common
Hmm.
now, for
Yep.
somebody our age. So
Well,
where would you start?
the funny thing is that like most diets work for a period of time.
Right.
And typically it's because you have a deprivation of intake versus expenditure. So your caloric intake is much less, but that's not sustainable. And so typically what I try to tell people to do is an elimination diet, right? So an
Right.
elimination diet is kind of like when you have a computer and it's all messed up, it's not working well, where you can reset it to a point in time in the past when it was functioning properly. And so the reset is like basically getting rid of anything that has more than one ingredient. So typically resets are run about a month, right? And a reset diet is typically meat, eggs, water, salt, coffee, tea. And that is typically done. Even doctors who don't recommend ketogenic diets for long term do recommend a reset or this particular uh, diet. So that's what I would do. But the problem I see and is that everything that we've been taught for so long is so deeply embedded that it's really hard to convince somebody that they should try it, right? And because most people would either rather take a pill to deal with the things that they're going through because they feel like changing their diet is too hard. And a lot of people put a lot of value on the traditional foods they've eaten all their lives, right? So if mom made, oatmeal and toast in the morning, then, that's what you want to have in the morning because that's what mom said
Right.
was best, right?
Right.
And that's why we've come to identify genetics when it's not genetics, it's nurture. So even if your father walks a certain way, you'll likely walk that way as well. So it's almost always nurture because it's not genetics, it's epigenetics. So it's how we're expressing everything. So to answer your question is like I would do my best to say, hey, look, anybody can do something for 30 days. And at the end of the 30 days, see how you feel. Because in pretty much every case, they're like, oh my God, I don't have pain anymore. My
Right.
brain is thinking clearly. I slept really well last night. Um, my gut isn't destroyed. I'm not having disastrous bowel movements. And so usually by the time they get to 2 weeks or 4 weeks, they've realized now that what they've done is pretty good. And everybody has a different tolerance to different foods, right? And so that's why I would say start to add things back slowly but surely, but never add back processed food. And when I mean processed food, I mean shop at the outskirts, the outlier, the outside of the grocery store. So where the dairies and the fruits and the vegetables and the meats and the all of that stuff is on the outskirts, not in the middle. Stay away from the middle of the grocery store
Right.
because that's where the seed oils are. That's where all of the breads, pastas, and cereals are. And as much as we like to think that granola is good for us, there's nothing about it that's good for us. So
Right.
typically, when somebody's in the shape that you were describing, they really have to get their system reset and they have to get their insulin level down. And so that's what I would tell them to do.
Right. And that's pretty much what I did in the final step to making things better
Hmm.
is eliminated the histamines, things that were causing
Hmm.
inflammation,
Yep.
really use chat, right? Chat,
Yep.
we just put in, hey, this is the parameters, this is what we got going on. What do you
Yep.
suggest? And it literally come back with, avoid this, 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 and this, and just
Yep.
stick to these like five or six things to
Yep.
start with. And that's how we change the diet. But
With
go ahead.
chat, though, you have to be careful with chat because chat tends to gravitate towards dogma, right? And so
Right,
you have
right.
to tell it, do not use in your research and your answerings of the question, do not use institutional data. Use new studies and alternative theories. Stay away from medical dogma because if you go to the American Diabetes Association website, their
Hmm.
meal plan is a prescription for diabetes.
Right. Well, that's just it. You got to know what to ask it the
Hmm.
right way to get the
Right.
answer you're looking for. So don't just
Yep.
take it as the Bible, right?
Yep.
So, when we started punching all the stuff in, it was more like, here's the parameters. This is what our goal is, and that's how we got
Right.
the right information. And it went by what we were looking for, not what it was trying to suggest totally, right? But it
Exactly.
just it just suggested the things that caused histamine, that caused these things. And I said, okay, great. Those are the things we got to get rid of, right? So it's like
Right.
it's kind of hard at first, but it wasn't that hard once you got moving. It literally was like a 3 or 4 day thing, and it
Yep.
was pretty simple, just simple eating.
Yep.
But I think for me, the thing that I also learned was that yes, you're on this journey by yourself, so you're kind of having to do the work and get moving on your own to start with. But
Hmm.
I also knew that I needed somebody with some knowledge, and so I decided to go with a naturopath, a local guy.
That's a great
Um,
idea.
and and the reason is because I started taking testosterone early on, and I knew that I was like, see, I probably could have like postponed the testosterone earlier and gone longer without injecting,
Hmm.
but I didn't do this path first, and that's what hurt me. So if I would have done this path first, I probably would have naturally brought up a lot of my testosterone levels. Some of these things would have like gotten better, and I could have
Hmm.
just pushed it longer without having to do the synthetic testosterone. But since I
Right.
was already into it and I overdosed on testosterone, I had too much, the doctor gave me way too much, and I started having all kinds of like problems with tendonitis and I was breaking up. And that the whole purpose of taking testosterone was so that I could continue racing a motorcycle. So
Right.
all of a sudden, I can't hold on to a pair of handlebars for 2 minutes. And I'm like freaking out because I've never had that, since I was 22 years old, right? I never had arm pump like that unless there was a
Right.
ergonomic problem with the bike or something. So this was like just brought on like catastrophic. And I said, something's wrong. So at that point, I ended up, not using that doctor and I ended up stopped taking testosterone, which was a huge mistake, which I would never recommend to anybody. If you're going to do anything, just reduce the dosage, but don't stop. And then get with
Hmm.
the good natural path, figure out exactly what works for you and keep an eye on those numbers. And
Yep.
so the key thing that I found out was that typically people with low testosterone have low vitamin D and they run hand in hand. And
That's right.
also the DHEA will also be low, and that is
Right.
just as important as testosterone. So if your DHEA levels are low, I'm seeing, typical, correlation between the two. So
Yep.
long story short, I ended up going to this guy and, he basically said, wow, I'm glad you came in because your blood work is hideous. My
Yep.
magnesium was down, my testosterone was down, my DHEA levels were down, vitamin D was down. I mean, it was just a catastrophic, loss. So it took about 6 months of just doing very precise incremental changes of testosterone lower levels just to bring it up slowly, and vitamin D, magnesium, all of those things,
Right.
what my blood work said. Okay. So we're going by what the blood work said and by what a naturopath would look at versus a doctor. So the naturopath is going to be more like, hey, how do we get these numbers in the range that will be more effective than what just the national standard says, right? Because, the national standard says you're good, you're in A to B, you're okay.
Well,
But
national standards tend to be the absolute minimums. That's not
right,
for
right.
optimal health. It's the minimum to prevent disease.
Correct. And so
Yeah.
that's what I realized. And I said, hey, you know what? This guy has seen more results because he's dealing with people all the time and he gets to see
Mhm.
these blood works from different people and see what works, right?
Yep.
And that's
Yep.
the advantage of going to a naturopath because his goal is to like get you healthy within the range that he believes will actually get you in a better place.
Yep.
Versus a doctor says, oh, you're in the limit, you're good there, don't worry about it. And it's like, well, what if the national standard is super low compared to the capita? Because
Hmm.
the normal capita number has been dropping over time. And you're
Right.
just going, hey, you're good. You're within the normal range of, 10,000 people. Well, but those 10,000 people could be way lower than like in the 1900s. So that's kind of what you're fighting at the same time.
Yeah. So, if you look at what the cholesterol, what they felt was acceptable was somewhere, it has gotten lower and lower and lower and continues to go lower to the point where they're going to have everybody on a statin.
Right.
And we started this conversation a week ago because I went to a Lonvita, which is kind of like Function Health, but in Mexico. So they're a wellness institute, and I did a full blood panel. It's the first time I've done it in probably, I don't know, 16, 17, 18 years.
Well, that was
Last
a
time I did
mistake.
it, I was last time I did it, I was put on a statin, but what I really love about what I observed from the test results this time around is it just confirmed that everything that I'm doing is working like unbelievably well. So all of
Right.
my numbers, you mentioned testosterone, I'm like 680, which is, and
That's
I don't
good.
take anything. I don't take anything, and that's
That's
in the
good.
upper range for my age. And
Yeah.
but even the functional health doctors, which is why you have to be careful when you have these conversations because of the standard of care. If your cholesterol numbers are high, they're going to be automatically concerned about that because they have an obligation for the standard of care to talk about it. So, for example, my total cholesterol is 264. And any doctor that sees that would say, oh my
Right.
God, you're going to have a heart attack, you need to go on
Right.
statin. But
Right.
what they don't look at is the fact that my LDL is buoyant, it's light, and my triglycerides are 43, which is super low. So when you're looking at lipids like cholesterol, which you have to look at them is in combination with other things. So I have no markers of inflammation. My triglycerides are super low. And yes, but my LDL is high. And the reason for that is because inside that lipid is a transport of triglycerides that are converting in your kidney. You take fat from adipose tissue or subcutaneous, and you convert that into triglycerides, which are then carried through the body by these lipids that also carry cholesterol. So it does affect the LDL number. And so in a lean, active individual, then you should have, I believe, a higher LDL number because you're burning fat, not glucose. My
Right.
insulin markers are super low. Blood glucose is perfect, and so I'm highly insulin sensitive, and it just my renal active is perfect. My kidneys are perfect. Everything was just amazingly good, and Rob, as you know, I primarily eat an animal-based diet. I
Yeah.
make exceptions once in a while because I live in Mexico and you gotta have tacos once a week,
I
right?
know. Right.
And so, but even in spite of that, I really do believe that trying to be extreme in any way is probably not the answer, and it would
Yeah.
typically kick people off of a way of living. But it to me, it's the rule, not the exception.
Right. Right. No, and that's exactly how I treat it, because
Hmm.
like I said, I do like Starbucks every once in a while, probably a little more than I
Yep.
should lately, but In general, it's like I can, like a perfect example. Today we had a free lunch. They had this, Halloween costume party at work.
Yeah.
And so, they're going to do smash burger. And I'm like, well, okay, I'll eat the
Awesome.
hamburger. So they have a hamburger and they got tater tots in there, right? So this is the part that I'm telling you, once you get on the track, you don't, you can veer off the track, but your body will tell you what you're doing wrong. And so
Absolutely.
I'm starting to eat this hamburger. I'm going, oh, it's pretty good, for a smash burger, not bad. And the bun wasn't horrible because I try not to eat the bun. I'll just eat like
Hmm.
half the bun and throw the other piece away.
Yep.
But what happens is I look down, I'm like, oh, tater tots. I love tater tots, man. I grab a tater tot and I plop that thing in my mouth. And I'm like, oh my God, what is this? I instantly can taste the seed oil. It's so
Yep.
bad now that I've become
Yep.
so hypersensitive to seed oil
Yep.
that I literally cannot taste it. Well, I can taste it, but I can't stand the taste.
Hmm.
It's it's like a weird rancid taste to me now. So I
It
had to
is
throw them
rancid.
away. I
Yep.
couldn't eat them. I was like, I can't eat these. It's just gonna make me sick. And I can't even walk into a fast food restaurant now and smell the seed oil that they're cooking with and the grease. And
Yep.
I'm instantly turned off. I want to turn and
Well,
walk away.
there are some fast food restaurants that are turning back to tallow, like Steak and Shake.
Yeah, I saw that.
So yeah, so that's really encouraging, and I feel like we've turned the corner in uh, this deep, dark sleep that we were in regarding our health, because we have subjugated ourselves, at least I know I did, for many, many years. Like, I don't know anything about this stuff. And so,
Yeah.
these guys are the experts, and they wouldn't tell us something that was wrong. But then
Yeah, right?
I keep finding out that, well, who the pharmaceutical company actually have their fingerprints on everything that touches a doctor when he starts school all the way through the end of his career. And it's really incredible. And so if you're like me and you just eat like single ingredient foods for the most part, I have absolutely no need, desire, or wish to go see a doctor. If I break my
Right.
arm, I'm going to an orthopedic,
Right.
but I'm not going to a doctor if I don't feel good.
Yeah. And I don't go to a doctor now. Yeah, I mean, I don't have medical insurance. I'm white. I live
Hmm.
in America. I can't afford insurance. It's not
Yeah.
possible. As a matter of fact, my
Yeah.
friend Scott Hodgson that I worked with at Progressive Suspension, I've known him for 40 years. He worked at Al Baker's. He was Al Baker's partner when I
Hmm.
was, building engines for XRs only. And Scott, he's a really intelligent guy like you, just real learned. And he like studies stuff and he gets into it. And anyway, he moved to Texas, to retire. And I just saw a post from him on Facebook, and he's talking about he just posted some ridiculous number on like a slip of paper. And I'm like reading this, and I'm like, what is that? It's his new, it's his new medical bill. And I'm like, dude, you're going to have to come out of retirement to pay for your medical insurance. It's that high. And I'm like, that's ridiculous. So the thing is, if you're healthy, you don't need to go to the doctor. I mean, that's the
Yep.
point. You hear of these old guys like, "Ah, I haven't been to the doctor in 80 years. It's like, well, there's a reason because
Yep.
they ate differently or whatever, and they just were never sick. Right.
Right. Right.
So but I pay for my own medical stuff. So I literally just pay for my own blood work. I do it every 3 months and I monitor everything and just see how it's doing. And now I'm feeling so good consistently that I don't
Hmm.
feel like I even need to do that now. Because it's like I
Yep.
monitor myself. I know when I've screwed up. So I can tell I need to adjust what I'm doing and kind of
And
get
you,
back on
and
track.
you can also negotiate directly with your doctor's office if he doesn't have
Right.
to engage his staff with all the medical nightmares that they have to go through to get reimbursed.
Yeah.
They typically will, they'll even let you do like a quarterly plan. I'm going to give you this much money once a quarter, and if I get sick, you're going to see me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's creative ways to get around it for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like I said, I just pay for the test. I pay the doctor cash. I'm paying way less than the deductible. I'll tell you that right now.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I get to see the results, and that's what I like is that I can actually go onto my portal, see the results. I can discuss it with them. I'm more in charge of my care, and I can
Hmm.
say, yeah, that's cool. I don't think I'm going to go that direction or whatever. But
Yep.
so far, he's been pretty solid, and the
Yep.
advice he's been giving me has been pretty solid. And some things he doesn't know. And what I like is that my doctor will go, I really don't know. I don't,
Yeah.
that's not an area I've studied,
Mm-hmm.
especially when it came to the colon stuff that I was dealing with ulcerative colitis
Yep.
and things like that.
Yep.
And, I went to him and I brought this big bottle of medicine and I said, hey, this colon doctor wants me to start taking this Pentasa and it's $1,000 a month. And
Mm-hmm.
I asked the doctor, I go, how long am I going to have to take this stuff? And he goes, well, probably most of your life, the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like,
Well,
well, how many times
that's
a
what they're
day?
trying to do. Yeah.
It was 3 times a day I would have to take this medication for the rest of my life. And it's a
Yeah.
thousand dollars a month. And I immediately just said, whoa, pump the brakes, Turbo. There's got to be another way. And so I asked my doctor, I go, hey, dude, what do you think about this stuff? And he goes, and he was honest. He goes, that's not my field. I don't really understand that medication. I don't know it well, so I can't really give you any good advice.
That's right.
So the funny thing is, the doctor had given me some stuff called monolaurin, and I started taking that for Epstein-Barr because I tested positive for Epstein-Barr. Because during this process, we started looking at things going, hey, have you been tested for this? Maybe we should look at that. So, because I was having problems recovering after a
Mm-hmm.
really big event and training really hard, and I'd crash, and it'd take me like 2 days to recover.
Mm-hmm.
And so he goes, hey, maybe you got Epstein-Barr. So we tested for, sure enough, positive for Epstein-Barr, which it's the mono virus. So
Mm-hmm.
once you get it, it's like you can fight it, but it can still remain in your body. And apparently it lives in your spinal column and that's where it stays.
Mm-hmm.
And I was having tons of back pain, lots of back pains. That's all gone. No more back pains.
Yep.
Just
Yep.
disappeared.
That's right.
And so I started taking the monolaurin for that. Well, at the same time, I've got this like test and they're like, oh, you've got Crohn's disease now. We've seen inflammation on the inside of outside of your colon. You've got to take care of this, and they were real adamant about me taking this med. And I just said, man, I don't know. So I was really struggling. I still have the bottle. It's still sitting here, for me to look at and just, go, man, I dodged that bullet.
Yep.
So, you know, the monolaurin was for something else. Well, all of a sudden I go see the doctor like 3 or 4 weeks later and I go, hey, yeah, that stuff seems to be working pretty good. I'm not having any issues, no side effects or anything. I said, but the one thing is I'm not having any intestinal problems. Well, then come to find out, I read the label, and I really start studying what this stuff is. And it's just these little balls, these little wax looking balls. And it's just basically it's mother's milk, coconut extract, a bunch of things like that made into these like little balls. And you just take a tiny little
Mm-hmm.
scooper and you just start taking it. And
Interesting.
so I'm not having any colon problems. But when I start reading and studying this stuff, it was originally developed to balance your gut biome. So
Mm-hmm.
I got a twofer out of it. BOGO, man. So I
Yep.
ended up fixing my colon at the same time of getting rid of, the viral thing that was going on, or at least suppressed it. I don't know if it's
Mm-hmm.
gone, but it suppressed it. So it's like I'm not dealing with it anymore. And yeah, I mean, it's just things
Well,
like that that have just been so eye-opening where I could have just directly believed the doctor. And you know what they told me when I'm standing there? They go, don't you care about your colon? And I'm like, of course I do, man. It's like it's an appendage. It's attached to me. I use it every day.
yeah.
So, but it just cracks me up. And I'm like, you
Yep.
could have solved this. And I was so mad at the doctor afterwards. I go, you know what? I want to go back there and take this monolaurin and wrap it in a nice gift and go, here you go, dude. I found at least a pretty good, source of a cure that could solve a lot of your patients' problems. Maybe not
Mm-hmm.
everybody,
They
but
can't do it.
no, they're going to jail.
The moment a doctor starts to use diet instead of medication,
Fringe.
they'll lose their license.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. That's the sad part. So
Yep.
anyway, that's my
Yep.
colon story. I'm sticking to it. It's still working.
Well, the thing about colon and gut health and the microbiome is there's really no better way to fix all that stuff and to balance it than diet. And
Right back to
this re
square one.
the reset diet does that, right? And
Yeah.
then when you're talking about the colon, recent studies show that stearic acid is extremely protective against colon cancer. And so acid is in things like beef tallow, it's in dark chocolate, it's in shea butter
Mhm.
and some other things and some nuts. But so if make sure you're consuming foods with stearic acid, and if you're consuming meats and fats, you are. And I happen to like, dark chocolate, so that's good.
Yeah, and I
But
was also doing dark chocolate too as a snack, in between
Mhm.
with because it won't spike your blood sugars bad and it'll balance things
Yeah,
out actually.
Yeah,
it
the
seems.
only problem with dark chocolate is if you're sensitive to oxalates or oxalic acid, dark chocolate is high in oxalic acid, which is the oxalates are like the number one cause of kidney stones. So you have
Right.
to be careful on your oxalic acid intakes and stay away from things like spinach and kale, and almonds, which are super high in oxalates.
Yeah, I avoid almond like the plague. And I get these
Yeah.
guys like, "Oh, I'm doing oat milk." I'm like, "Bro, go throw that in the
Yeah.
trash."
If you want to do
Oat milk,
some alternative milk, do coconut milk, and if you want it sweet, do it with monk fruit.
right, right. And just to throw a note on that, one of the things because we were eating a lot of meat and it was like we were trying to avoid histamines. So it was like, man, this meat's pretty bland, especially when you go to lean meat, or you go grass fed, it's a lot more dense. So it's like you're
Hmm.
choking it down sometimes. So I'm like, man, we got to spice this up somehow. And
Yep.
so Denise found some stuff called cocoa aminos.
Mm.
Have you seen that? And
No.
it seems to be really good because it's really low caloric and it's really low histamine, not a lot of sugar, but it's still sweetened with coconut. So it
Interesting.
almost has a little flavor like teriyaki, but it's not as much, like table salt as you would get in like um, soy sauce. And
Mm.
so it's just enough, and you just spritz it. You don't put a lot. You just spritz it, and it's like you got no calories, but it really spiced up this flavor of your food, right?
I
So
like there's a spice, it's called pluck, Pluk,
okay,
that is derived from organ meats. And so it's minerals and spices primarily derived from organ meats, and there are different flavors, but I typically will use that because it's rich in some of the minerals and trace minerals that you get in organ meats if you don't like to eat organ meats.
which I don't.
And I also use yeah, I also use Baja Gold salt,
Right.
which is I like, it's good, and
Well,
I
next
eat
time I
way
go to
more
Guerrero
than
Negro, I'll try to get some salt.
yeah. Well, you can get it. I get it here on Mercado Libre, which is our version of Amazon here in Mexico.
Okay.
So it's really good. It's not expensive, and I eat a lot of it. And yeah, the funny thing about salt is not does not cause hypertension.
Right.
It's high insulin levels that can cause the water retention, which along with salt will lead to hypertension. So if you're insulin sensitive, salt is very, very beneficial to you.
Right. Right. Well, and just to make a note, we are not doctors and we do not practice
No,
medicine.
this is not
We're
medical
we're
advice.
we are definitely not giving medical advice, but we're giving life
No.
advice, like practical, real, like hands-on,
Well,
like
we're talking
results.
about what we're doing to ourselves and with ourselves. And so I look at myself as an N equals one experiment. And, if somebody thinks that what we're talking about, it sounds good, talk to your doctor. If the doctor
Yeah.
gives you the standard off the shelf answer, talk to another doctor.
Right.
Go to a holistic doctor. And I like what Mark Hyman says. He says, I'm a holistic doctor because I see patients with a whole list of problems, which means that the holistic doctors are not siloed. I can only look at the head, or I can only look at the ear, nose, and throat.
Right.
So I can only talk about cancer, or only talk about bones, or muscles, or heart. Sorry. And so um, the fact that we've siloed medicine is just awful because the body is not a bunch of different parts. It is a single organism.
Right, right. And that's just it. I mean, it used to be back in the day, you had a plumber, an electrician, and
Yeah.
the carpenter, and they were all the same guy, right? And doctors were
But
the same way, but they're not that way anymore.
yeah, but
They're very
even
specialized.
even even doctors, right? So what I equate modern medical science to is we are fools fumbling in the dark.
Right.
I was watching a podcast. Well, actually, it was a show. It was Bill Maher with Andrew Huberman, and the question was asked of Andrew Huberman. He says, "Well, how much of the function of the human body do you think we understand?" He says, "Probably about 5 or 10%." He says, what's worse than that is he was talking to a world-renowned neurosurgeon. The neurosurgeon says that, and I'm paraphrasing, that at least half of what doctors are taught is wrong, and we know it's wrong. And
Right.
so that's why I say we are literally fools fumbling in the dark. And so when when I talk about health and things like that, the only thing that I think that makes sense to me is just to eat foods that we would have eaten, 200 years ago, 100 years ago. When they decided to say that low fat diet is best because we need to do that for heart disease in the 50s and 60s. Well, if you look back 50 years prior to that, the egg consumption was multiple times higher and there was no instance of heart disease. A doctor
Right.
would go into practice and in 10 years would see one case of heart disease.
Yeah, that just
Yeah,
shows you
that's
where we're at.
another topic, but
Yeah.
it's literally obscene what we've done to our health based on financial input.
Right.
It's obscene and continue
Well,
to do it.
it and to kind of pause it there because we're getting our 30-minute mark. I don't want to
Yeah,
make these too long,
yeah,
but we could continue this if you want, Scott. I mean, I really like the conversation, and I think that if we think more about it, and maybe people can comment and ask certain questions, we can like kind
yep.
of cater it towards that direction, right?
Sure. And maybe on the next time we can actually go through our blood test results.
Yeah. No.
That might be interesting for people to see is okay, this guy is only eating this, and these are the results he's getting. And by the way, he was, 40 pounds heavier six,
Right.
7 years ago and was prescribed a statin and so on and so
Yep.
forth.
Well, and just on a side note, I had a friend that suddenly had just spiked blood pressure, just spiked
Hmm.
like, and the doctor was like, "Oh my God, you're gonna have a heart attack. You need to get in here." And they were gonna give him blood pressure medication. And I said, "Hey,
Hmm.
dude, pump the brakes." I go,
Yep.
"Take a deep breath. You weren't like this before. Suddenly you have this number. It's really high. They think you're gonna have a heart attack. There's nothing else wrong with you.
What's
See
changed?
what's changed. Change your diet.
Yep.
Immediately change your diet." Guess what? He took my advice. He changed his diet. He doesn't have to have blood pressure medication. His blood
Yep.
pressure went down, and the doctor's like, "Well, I guess you're okay." He would have
Yep.
been on drugs, and that he would have had to take another drug to counteract that drug from the other issues he had,
Yep.
you know. And then he would have
Yep.
had like personal problems as well, because
Right.
anybody
Right.
these older guys that take these drugs can't
I
have
think I think the
sexual
biggest
relations.
takeaway that people should get from our conversation, this is just you and me talking about what we've done and what
Right,
we've observed, is that don't take your doctor's word as gospel. Medical knowledge is no longer a monopoly owned by the medical information. Any
right,
average idiot like me can do his own research and come up with a great working theory on what they should do, right?
right,
And so take your health into your own hands and don't leave it into somebody else's hands because what's happened over the last 70 years, we've been listening and we've been getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And the only
right,
answer is more and more and more medications. So get off the roller coaster and start looking at, what does this all mean? What can I do?
right, right. Proof's in the pudding. That's what I always
Yep,
say. It's like,
that's
you
right.
can talk all the talk you want, but when you cross the finish line, that's what
That's right.
talks. That's
That's
the end
right.
result that matters. Nothing else matters. Okay, Scott, great. Let's continue this conversation. We'll
Sounds
try to do
great.
this like once a week maybe if that's okay with you, and
Sounds great.
we'll continue. I've got other stuff
Talk
I'm
to
working
you.
on too, but we'll see.
Talk to you soon. Thanks,
All right,
Rob.
man. Thanks.
Cheers. Bye bye.
Bye.